Hey everyone, welcome to the Off the Bench podcast. This is Heidi St. John, and today I'm going to air part 2 of my interview with my friend, Dr. Jeff Myers, and we'll be talking about the importance of objective truth. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Before I jump into part 2 of my interview with Dr. Jeff today, I want to ask if you guys would take part in a survey that we are putting out for podcast listeners. We are thinking about launching a subscription service for podcast listeners. If you're interested in getting some live time with me here at the show, exclusive interviews, behind the scenes look at what it takes to put the podcast together every day, we'd love to have you join us for the new subscription service. Right now, we're just trying to gauge what's interesting to you. So hop on over to the show notes today and fill out that survey. And as soon as we have that subscription service ready, we'll let you know. In the meantime, here is part 2 of my interview with my friend, Dr. Jeff Myers.
And in those situations, you can use questions. Jesus asked a lot of questions. I've heard hundreds of sermons about the teachings of Jesus. Never heard a single sermon about the questions of Jesus.
That would be a good one.
It was it's fascinating. I had a friend who counted them up. He said, "Did you know in the Gospels, Jesus asked 288 questions?" And I said, "You have a lot of time on your hands." But that's always stuck in my mind. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense. Jesus was a rabbi. Rabbis taught largely by asking questions. He had grown up in this way.
Yeah.
In fact, when Jesus was 12, there's a fascinating account in Scripture of him going to the temple. And his parents, they leave, they offer their sacrifices, they go home, they have no idea where he is. Come back 3 days later, find him in the temple. And the Scripture is really interesting. It says that they were amazed at his answers. And then it goes on to say, and I'm paraphrasing here, because of the questions he asked. That asking a good question is the way to demonstrate the deepest level of knowledge about something. So Jesus asked these questions all of the time. What are the most important laws? Okay, that's a dangerous question to ask a Pharisee. They got hundreds of them. Well, Jesus' response in one of the Gospels records him saying, "So how do you read it?" to the other person. We're talking about, this is the one that in the book of John chapter 1, Philip comes to his buddy Nathanael and says, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law." And this one is asking, "How do you read it?" He wasn't saying to this other person, "Whatever you say is true." Mm-hmm. He's just inviting a conversation. Blind Bartimaeus. So Jesus is in Jericho. You got to go through Jericho on the trip to Jerusalem. And so he's in Jericho, and Bartimaeus is blind, says, "Jesus, heal me." Jesus says to him, "What would you like for me to do for you?" Which I think is, it's crazy. What if you were one of his disciples?
Right.
You're like,
"Hello.
He's blind.
Hello.
What are you thinking? Why do you even ask that?" Isn't it interesting, though, that Jesus did not assume that the blind man wanted to see?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we all know people who are sick who don't really want to be well because they've wrapped their identity around their sickness. Mm-hmm. Jesus was pointing to a deeper issue with Bartimaeus. And when Bartimaeus said, "I want to see," then Jesus healed him, restored his sight. So if you've got time, if there's not an urgency, somebody's not in imminent danger, then make it a goal to walk alongside of them and ask questions as often as you make statements and see if the relationship develops. And at least then you realize, oh, we're actually not butting heads like this. We're actually side by side walking toward the truth.
Right. Well, and there are a lot of people listening to us talking right now who maybe they're seeing conversations happen in the social media, the sort of what is now the town square, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we lob bombs at each other over the walls of the internet, and we're not really listening. I don't know that it's a place where much listening is happening. I think there's just people spouting opinions and sometimes conjecture. But I'm curious to know what some of the best questions are. Like, speak to the there's a young person listening to this right now who's like, well, how do I wade into the water with my friend who believes that that gender is just a social construct, and that if I'm born with male genitalia, I could still somehow be a woman. I mean, we've all watched now with a fair degree of horror as Dylan Mulvaney decided that he wanted to be, he's talking about, what is it, day like 38 of being a girl, day 38 of girl. It's horrifying to someone who's an actual woman to see the erasure of women. Like, these
Yeah.
are dangerous ideas and they're hurting people. And not the least of which is Dylan Mulvaney. But how do young people especially wade into these conversations with a fair degree of confidence and courage and kindness, like that mixture of those three things, that confidence to say, hey, I understand my position clearly, and the courage, which is that ability to step out into the public square when you're going to be, you're going to get the smack down, and then the kindness, which is the tolerance that Pope Benedict was talking about.
Well, and of course, asking the question in relation to Dylan Mulvaney amplifies it, because I think that person has millions of social media followers.
Oh, yes.
Probably because it's a train wreck waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And people are sort of waiting to, this is just so bizarre.
Yeah, they're not following him because they're so inspired. They're following him because it really is watching a train wreck in slow motion. And they're just wondering, where is this thing? When is it going to actually go off the tracks completely?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, there's a person there who God created and loves very much, and who is, and I'm not making this as a clinical diagnosis here, but there's a deeply disturbed aspect to this.
Yes.
And it's manifested itself in what can only be referred to as kind of a misogynistic parody. Like, any woman who's watching this would say, oh, please, like, you really know what it's like to menstruate. Oh, please, like, you really think you could be pregnant. The destruction of womanhood is only one of the victims of that kind of a thing. But the first thing I would say to a young person is, don't do it through social media. Don't even try to have the discussions through social media. Just forget social media.
Yeah.
Face-to-face is best. It's always best. And you think about, well, how do we know that it's best? Why wouldn't you just send messages to someone? You disagree with them, you shoot something across the bow, they shoot something back. Well, if there's nothing at stake, then you might do that because it's just fun. But if something's really at stake, that these people really are image bearers of God who have been deluded and need to know the truth, then how we communicate, it really matters. Marshall McLuhan used to say, this professor of communication from Canada used to say, the medium is the message. How something is communicated is part of what is communicated.
It's good.
So if I was reading another book about Ronald Reagan recently. I read them all. And,
me too.
Yeah. Oh gosh, this one was so good. It was Brett Baer's 3 Days in Moscow.
I haven't read that yet.
Yeah, it was great. It was really terrific. And Brett Baer's a very thoughtful reporter, Fox News, but also takes time to write these books, which are, I think, great. I've at least read 2 of them now.
And I wonder, does he have a ghostwriter? I'm like, where are you finding time? He's got to have a ghostwriter.
Yeah. And he has somebody who helps him write everything up, who helps him do the research and all that. But the books wouldn't happen if he didn't give that person a strong sense of direction and then lend his voice to it, which he does.
Yeah.
But in any event, you find that Gorbachev and Reagan, leading these 2 nations with nuclear weapons, enough nuclear weapons to destroy the world, 100 times, something like that.
Yeah.
They didn't just send long letters to each other. They had to meet face to face. If you really want to get something across to somebody, you go there. Now, later, after you've established the relationship, you can write letters back and forth. But you first of all have to go there. So that's the very first thing. And the most important thing, you start by making it as personal as you possibly can. The second thing is you just ask questions. You have nothing to lose by asking, tell me, I know a lot of people find Dylan Mulvaney's TikTok account really interesting. Tell me why you find it interesting. Tell me what you're thinking about it. When you talk with your friends about it, what do they say? Those sorts of questions are easy to ask. There's no downside that I can think of to asking them. Mm-hmm. And then you can ask, is there any real evidence that there is a difference between sex and gender? This is the claim, that your gender is how you feel about yourself, and then your sex is what you were assigned at birth, which is a terrible term we've already talked about.
Yeah.
Why would you give credibility to that viewpoint? Is it if it's not possible for someone with XX chromosomes to replace all their chromosomes with XY chromosomes, then why would we somehow hold out hope? Why would we involve medicine here? Why wouldn't we say this person needs to go to counseling? There are just all kinds of questions that you can ask to sort of get at the truth. And then if the person says, well, you're obviously being a bigot by asking these questions, then you just say, you know what? I'm a little bit afraid to talk about things if the end result is going to be that we just label each other and call names. Mm. Why is it important to you to label me?
So you're taking almost every attack and turning it into a question that causes whoever it is you're talking to actually have to think about their position rather than attacking, is what you're saying.
I start with the assumption that hurt people hurt people. So if this person is attacking me, there's something behind the attack. Mm-hmm. It could just be this person feels an extreme desire to be right, to control every situation. Well, that's an interesting thing to know. Mm-hmm. If it's all about control, then I realize I can answer all their arguments about transgender.
It won't make any difference.
It won't make any difference at all. Mm-hmm. One of the core questions I ask, in fact, this summer, we were asked to demonstrate this kind of an atheist role play with a group that was getting ready to go out and invite people to come to an evangelistic service. And this was going to be like 20,000 people are coming to this thing. So these kids are really nervous. And as we did this atheist role play, and toward the end, I just said to the person, because they were bringing up this argument, that argument, I said, if I could answer every single one of your questions beyond any doubt, factually, that it would be correct, would you become a Christian? Mm. It's amazing. I've never had someone say, yes. They always say, no, I wouldn't. Well, then those questions really aren't the issue, are they? Mm-hmm. It's like when someone on the abortion issue says, well, what about rape and incest? Okay, so if we eliminated all abortions except those that occurred through rape and incest, would that satisfy you? Person never says yes.
Right.
Because
it's not about that.
The whole argument is a dodge to begin with.
Right.
Okay. But if you're not in a position to ask questions, then you never find out what's really behind the curtain, so to speak.
Well, and it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning of the show, which was we have to be willing to grapple with reality.
Yeah.
And if we're unwilling to do that, then the conversation is pointless. And then the back and forth, the exchange that these kids are doing on social media is going to be fruitless because we have to be willing to grapple with reality. I was thinking that the difference, in how we are handling this now, as opposed to 25 years ago, had the same thing been the case with anorexia, right? So one of my very closest friends in high school struggled with anorexia. I mean, this is, 30 years ago. And we told her the truth. Because had we lied to her and said, yep, boy, you are overweight. I'll tell you what, you're right. Just keep eating that spoonful of flour every day, which is what she was doing. We would have killed her. Mm-hmm. But because we loved her, we told her the truth. You're hurting yourself. What you see in the mirror isn't reality. And the interesting thing about that is we weren't attacked for it. But now if someone looks in the mirror and they see a member of the opposite sex staring back at them, you're not allowed to tell them the truth. And to me, this is a sign of a culture in decline. That unless and until we're willing to have these hard conversations and not shame the person who's trying to get to the truth, we're going to continue to struggle.
Yeah. There's so much to what you just said. I was also thinking about people using steroids because they had muscle dysphoria.
Yes.
Right. And then we realized later, there are all these lawsuits right now about steroids. Okay. And there are going to be a lot of lawsuits about transgender medicine too.
Oh boy. Yeah.
We've dug into this. In fact, a journalist and I've been authoring an ebook on transgender that we're planning to have done in the middle of January and release soon. You'll hear about it for sure. It's going to be really controversial. But so much of that battle was lost 10 years ago when standards of care were developed by the American Medical Association and no one was paying attention.
Come on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy,
Right?
that came around to bite us in 2020. That's for sure.
There's no question.
Yeah. Safe and effective. It's safe and effective.
Right.
We don't even know what those words mean.
Yeah. But it was all water under the bridge.
Yes.
Like, when did that ship sail? Actually in about 2003.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 2003. If you as a Christian weren't intentional, involved with your antenna up in the medical field, then you missed it.
Yeah.
You missed the opportunity to weigh in on the conversation.
Yeah.
So you can still battle it, but you're fighting a rear guard action. It's not an easy battle anymore. It's not one where the truth can easily come out.
Which is why you see these questionnaires. I mean, every doctor's office that I know of in the Pacific Northwest, boy, if you go to a regular doctor, especially if they're part of a large hospital system or whatever, they're going to ask you what sex you were assigned at birth. They're going to ask you how you identify. You can choose to be non-binary in the state of Washington if you want to be. And you're right, because this is so entrenched now. We missed it. Because I remember when I first heard about it, I was like, there is no way. I remember hearing, I don't know how many years ago, maybe a decade ago, I remember first hearing the word transgender and thinking, there is no way that would ever take root in the culture. But the Bible teaches us that the heart is desperately wicked. And you're right. I mean, going back again to the beginning of the show before we close it out today, you started off by saying we have to look for truth not inside of ourselves, which, as the Bible says, if we look for truth in here, we're going to miss it. We've got to look for truth in the person that is truth, and that's Jesus.
Yeah. That's this is so good. This is so good. Well, we've got to do a couple things. We've got to be boned up on truth and recognize what it is. And the reason I'll just put a plug in for the book, Truth Changes Everything, because I didn't just want it to be a rant about the truth. I wanted to show how in history, individual people who were just like us stood for the truth, and it changed the course of history, even in times that were far worse than the ones that we're in right now.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, listen, the Summit Ministries program is trusted by a lot of parents. About half the students who come to it are homeschooled or have been homeschooled at some point in their lives because the kids need to know that their parents are not crazy for what they believe.
Yeah.
And the parents need someone for their kids who also says so.
Yes.
Right? So that you can understand the truth and then you can embrace it rather than just say, oh, I believe it because my parents taught me. That doesn't go very far when you get to be an adult.
Yeah.
So that's the program that we offer. And if that's going to be of interest to anybody who's listening, we would welcome young adults 16 to 22 years of age to participate with us.
And these are offered around the country, correct?
They are. Yeah, we're offering them this year in Manitou Springs, Colorado, and in Lookout Mountain, Georgia. We'll have a 1-week program in Kentucky on a college campus up there.
Anywhere near the Creation Museum?
Well, it's actually pretty close. It's not that far. It's not that far away. It's in near Lexington, Kentucky, on the campus of Asbury University.
I know right where that is. So you have to go over and see the Ark then.
And then we'll be doing we also do custom programs. So I'm doing one this next month for Air Force Academy cadets.
Nice.
We just finished one for Christian musicians in Nashville. We've got one coming up for European students in Malta. So, I mean, there are all different kinds of things that we're doing, but the main programs for American students are going to be in Colorado and in Georgia this year.
Well, I'm really excited about what you're doing. And I think for parents listening, Dr. Jeff is making such a crucial point. There is a point that every young person needs to come to whereby they own their faith. For parents, as I think homeschool parents can certainly fall into this, right? If I just do everything right, if I just keep my kids home, if I only. But the truth is, Jeff and I both know homeschool graduates who have walked away from the faith, who were brought up in homes where both of the parents love the Lord, but that child never had the opportunity to fully ask the questions that he or she wanted to ask. And Summit really gives the opportunity for these kids to bring their difficult questions. I know several of the people that speak for Summit Ministries, and I could not recommend it more highly enough. It really is life-changing for these kids to have the opportunity to ask the hard questions and realize there are answers. And their biblical answers, and that their faith can stand up to the questions. I think that's the big one. What you hear from young people, like, well, I don't know, some of this pie in the sky Bible. I told it to my professor at university, and he laughed at me. And your kids need to be ready for that.
They need to be ready, and you can be ready.
Yes.
We trained last year 70,000 students. They are moving out into the culture.
Yes.
10,000 or so of them are of the age where they're actually moving out of high school into college, and they can hold their own.
It's amazing.
It's not because they don't have PhDs. They don't know all of the ins and outs of every argument, but they do know that every person has a worldview, that every worldview is religious, and that you have to be able to give arguments for what you believe.
Yeah.
If they know those things, that's what begins to make the difference.
Yeah, amen. That's totally right. Dr. Jeff, where can people find you online?
Just go to summit.org. That's the best place to look for information on the summer programs. And then the book, Truth Changes Everything, you can just Google Truth Changes Everything, and wherever you like to buy books.
I love it. Dr. Jeff, thank you for coming on and talking with me about this important topic, the case for truth and why it matters. I've so enjoyed talking with you, and you'll have to come back again, and we'll tear it up some more. I appreciate it.
If that's an invitation, I accept. I would love to do that. This is real. This is so much fun because we've got to be able to have some forum where we can speak openly and at length about these issues.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important. And our kids need to see us grappling with these topics. Moms and dads need to not be afraid to let their kids ask the tough questions. And, sometimes you'll see a parent just kind of, they bristle because they don't feel confident or whatever. Yeah. And it's our kids have got to be able to ask these questions because there are answers, and the answers are found in the Bible. Thank you so much, Jeff, for encouraging me today. I feel like I'm lighter than when I came in. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being a champion for truth, Heidi, and for everything that you do with all of the various, the speaking that you do and the companies that you operate, all on behalf of parents and children to move them toward the truth. And you are a difference maker. I'm very, very grateful for you.
Thank you. Well, back at you, my friend. I appreciate what you're doing. We'll see you back here again soon.
Okay.
You guys want more information on Dr. Jeff Myers and the ministry that is Summit Ministries, you can go to summit.org, or you can go to HeidiSt.John.com and click on the show notes, and I will have information, including a link to Dr. Jeff's book regarding truth. You guys, this is a topic that we need to grapple with in our homes with our children. I hope you guys will check out Summit Ministries for your teens this summer. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you back here again at the intersection of faith